Hello, friends and my dear students. I welcome each and every one of you for this online guide classes. I hope and pray that you all are doing well by God's grace. I am Sudhakar Agiri, teacher by profession. In this video, we are going to discuss the first lesson for this academic year, that is the representation of geographical features. Hope you all can see on the screen. This chapter is connected to the higher standards of 9th and 10th standard, my dear friends. When you all reach 10th standard, you will understand the topographical maps very clearly. Due to these topographical maps, even this chapter is introduced from 6th standard. Hopefully, you all have studied this chapter thoroughly from 6th and 7th standard. If you have not understood this chapter from classes 6th and 7th standard, I have uploaded the same video. Please watch the video and get the information. When we talk about these topographical maps or the representation of geographical features, what we can understand? The surface of the earth is uneven. It is not in uniform. So it consisted of landforms, it consisted of plateaus, plains, lowlands, highlands, etc. All these things you will see in this particular lesson. So the Survey of India, its headquarters are located at Dehradun in Uttarakhand, bears the special responsibility to ensure that the country's locations are explored and mapped suitably so that they provide base maps for the development, for the prosperity and for the security for our country now and for the generations to come. This is a small introduction regarding the topographical maps of. Let's start the lesson. Let's understand the lesson. In this lesson, the following points we are going to discuss, my dear friends. What are they? The first one is counters on topo sheets. The second one is distinguish between steep and gentle slopes through counters. The third one is identify landforms through counters on the topo sheets. The fourth one is differentiate patterns of settlements on the topo sheet. The next one is draw counters and related landforms on plain paper. And the next one is interpret and analyze the topo sheets. All these topics or all these points we are going to discuss in the continuation of this particular lesson. So as I told you, these learning terms are very important, my dear friends. These learning terms are going to come in the examination compulsory. So I request all of you to please learn these learning terms compulsory. So what are learning terms? Learning terms are nothing but meanings. So these learning terms may come in the form of definitions, in the form of fill in the blanks, or in the form of multiple choice questions. So please learn these learning terms. The first one is counter. What is a counter? A counter is nothing but a counter is an imaginary line joining places having the same height above the sea level. Please remember. The next one is counter interval. What is counter interval? The space between the counter line represents a set distance. That is called counter interval. What is the definition of a mountain? It is an elevation which rises abruptly above the surrounding areas. Plateau. What is the definition of a plateau? It is an elevated plain with relatively level surface which falls so rapidly. The next point, col or pass. A col is a short, steep-sided depression on the ridge. Temporary settlements. What are temporary settlements? The settlements which are occupied for a short period are called temporary settlements. The next one, what is permanent settlement? The settlements which are occupied for a long period of time are called permanent settlements. And nucleated settlements are also called as compact settlements or compact patterns. Nucleated settlements have a number of houses built close to one another along the narrow streets. So please learn these learning terms. Let's start the lesson. Let's learn from the textbook. A topographical map is a large scale map. Now there are two types of maps are there, my dear friends. One is small scale map and the other one is large scale map. Now what is the meaning of small scale map? Small scale map gives small amount of details about a large area. For example, map of India, right? Now the second one is large scale map. What is the meaning of large scale map? It gives large amount of details about a small area. So a topographical map comes under which map? Large scale map. Please remember this point, my dear friends, which shows elevation. What do you mean of elevation? Heights, distance above the sea level, which are actually measured in meters or in feet. And the next one is relief. What do you mean of relief, by the way? It is the difference between heights, between the highest point and the lowest points on the land surface, and this relief is also measured in meters or in feet. Please remember these points, my dear friends. And the next point is drainage. What do you mean of drainage, by the way? Drainage means river systems, particularly. Okay, it also describes the flow of water through well constructed pipelines, groundwater supply through canals. All this comes under drainage system. And the next one is vegetation. What do you mean of vegetation? Plant species. So growing plants, all the plants in the rainforest are comes under vegetation. And there are a few types of vegetations are there in India. For example, topographical evergreen forest, monsoon types of forest, deciduous forest. All this comes under vegetation. So man-made features like roads, railways, settlements, all these are shown in topographical maps. These are used for engineering purpose. How topographical maps are used for engineering? Engineering means like for research purpose, for planning, for designing, etc. What is the meaning of public works, by the way? Public works include construction of roads, construction of schools, construction of hospitals, which comes under government, right? And the next one is commercial and residential planning. So these topographical maps are very useful maps, my dear friends. Information from such maps is used extensively in the field of defense. Now when you talk about defense, we have three types of defense systems are there. One is Indian Army, Indian Navy, and the Indian Air Force, right? Or the fourth one, please you remember that. And the next one is navigation. What do you mean of navigation? Navigation is nothing but controlling and monitoring the movements of land, water, space, aeronautics. All this comes under navigation. So these topographical maps are very useful maps, my dear friends. Hope you all have understood the uses of this topographical maps and importance of this topographical maps. Let's go to the next topic, that is relief. On a topo sheet, the study of relief includes a description, complete details about mountains, plateaus, plains, slopes of the land, and the highest as well as the lowest points. All these features can be identified with the help of counters. Please remember, with the help of counters itself. If there are no counters on the topographical maps are of no use. So counters are also important, whereas topographical maps are also very important. Without counters, we cannot identify anything. Please remember. What is the meaning of counters, by the way? A counter is an imaginary line joining places having the same height above the sea level. Please remember these definitions, my dear friends. And counter lines make it possible to represent shapes on a two-dimensional surface. Topographical maps are drawn on two-dimensional surface, but as soon as the counter lines are drawn on the topographical maps, it converts into three-dimensional shapes. Please remember this point. Counters are drawn in brown color on the topo sheet. Hope you all have seen topographical maps, my dear friends. The space between the counter lines represents a set of distance called counter interval. What do you mean of counter interval? The gap between the two lines are known as counter interval. The gap, the space between the two lines. Let's move to the next topic. Counter lines show elevation of the land. Please remember, elevation, steepness of its slope, shape of the land at various heights. These are the points, or these are the rules that the counter line shows on the topographical maps. Please remember these points, my dear friends. The spacing of the counter line expresses steepness of slopes. If there is a space in the counter lines, means it gives steepness of the slope. If counters are crowded together, it means within a short distance there is a change in height and slope in steep. Please, this is the second point. And the third point is, if it is widely spaced counters, on the other hand, means gradual change will be there in the height and the gentle slopes. So if you remember these 3 points, you can easily read the counter lines on the topographical maps, and you can read the topographical maps very easily. Okay, let's study the basic features of counters. Now they are continuous curved lines. Hope you all can see over here. These are curved lines. Now you can see, as I told you, I had explained this particular point already. What is the rule number 1? Every point of a counter line has a same elevation. And what is the rule number 2? Counter lines separate uphill from downhill. Uphill is different, downhill is different. And rule number 3, counter lines do not touch or cross each other except at a cliff. Rule number 4, every fifth counter line is darker in color. They are continuous curved lines, as I told you in the beginning. Curved lines join the places having the same height. The next point, counters are drawn at a constant interval. There is a distance maintained on the topographical maps. The value of the counters is written towards the ascending side, upward. It will be in increasing form, 100, 200, 300, 400, or on the counters themselves. We can write the numbers on the counter line or between the counter lines. Counters are shown in brown color on a map. So these are the basic features of counters. Hopefully you all have understood the basic features of counters. If you don't know the basic features of counter lines, we will not understand the topographical maps. There is a gap. Let's go to the next topic, that is types of slopes. Now there are 2 types of slopes are there. One is gentle slope and the other one is steep slope. Now what is the meaning of gentle slopes? Far apart. When the degree or angle of the slope of a feature is very low, the slope will be gentle. The counters representing this type of slopes are far apart, right? When the lines are far apart, there will be a gentle slope, whereas when the lines are closely spaced, that means there is a steep slope is there. Far apart means gentle slope, closed space means counters representation of relief. Counters representation of relief. I told you the meaning of relief. It is the difference in heights between the highest point and the lowest point on the land surface, which is measured in meters or in feet. Relief is an essential aspect of physical geography. Mountains, valleys, passes, hills, etc. can be represented by counter lines. The first one is mountain. Now, it is an elevation which rises abruptly above the surrounding areas. Hope you all can see the image, which is abruptly raised above the surrounding areas. On a map, counters showing mountains are closely spaced. So on the topographical maps, if the counter lines are closely spaced, means they are called as mountains. With the increase in the counter value, generally there are several summits in the mountain, right? Hopefully you all can see this. We are going to have a small practice how to identify a plateau, a hill, or a mountain by doing some practical. The next one is conical hill. What is a conical hill? A natural elevation of earth's surface smaller than a mountain is known as hill. Smaller than a mountain is known as hill. Its base is broad. Okay, its base is broad and almost circular in shape and has a narrow peak. Counters showing conical hills are almost circular with peak of the hill as their center. Please remember this point, my dear friend. The counters are drawn almost at a regular interval. What do you mean of plateau? Plateau is nothing but tableland. It is an elevated plain with relatively level surface which falls down rapidly. Counters showing plateau are almost concentrated on its sides and its center part is almost without counters. What is the ridge, by the way? It is a high elongated hill represented on a map by elliptical counters. Can you see? Elliptical counters. Okay, let's go to the next topic, that is col or pass. A col is a short, steep-sided depression on the ridge. Roads usually actually flows through these depressions. Such a passage provided by a col in a mountain is called pass. It is lowland between two mountain. Okay, it is a lowland between two mountain peaks. Hopefully you all can see the image over here. Okay, this is the image of Kolar Pass. When the depression between the mountain peaks becomes broad and low, a schedule is formed. Okay, it resembles the shape of schedule of a horse, as a result of which is known as a schedule. Gap. The term gap is generally used for the pass which has been lowered by the action of running water. Gaps are similar to passes but more rugged and difficult to navigate. So we cannot go through these gaps. These are similar to passes but more rugged, and it is very difficult to navigate. Let's come to the next topic, that is settlements. What is a settlement? Settlement is a place where people live and interact through various activities such as agriculture, manufacturing, trading, etc. All types of settlements are shown in red in color, along with other details regarding settlements. Settlements including roads, huts, deserted villages, temples, churches, post offices, police stations, and others. Settlements can be either temporary or permanent. The settlements which are occupied for a short period are called temporary settlements, whereas permanent settlements are those settlements which are occupied for a very long period of time. Okay, what do you mean of settlements, by the way? Settlement is nothing but dwelling place of people is known as settlements. Any kind of dwelling place it might be. So as I told you, ancient period natural shelters were there, those are known as caves. People lived in caves, and people started living in caves, and they started learning about the culture. Slowly they started living near the banks of the rivers, and then they started converting into villages, slowly started converting into towns, then cities, and now we can see everywhere, we can see skyscrapers are there. So we can see these are always different types of settlements. Two types of settlements are there. One is on the basis of time, and the second one is on the basis of facilities. Now on the basis of time, it is divided into two parts. One is temporary settlement and the other one is permanent settlement. Whereas in temporary settlements, people lived at a place for a very short period of time. They used to move from one place to the other place in search of food, clothing, and shelter. Those type of people are known as nomads. Whereas in permanent settlement, people lived in a particular place for a very long period of time, maybe by generations. Whatever the settlements that we are looking around us, our cities, it all comes under permanent settlements. On the basis of facilities, again it is divided into two parts: rural settlement, and the other one is urban settlement. What do you mean of rural settlement, by the way? Rural settlements are those settlements where people are engaged in village works like agriculture, hunting, fishing. Okay, they use primary activity. They don't have any kind of facilities. They live a very simple life. So that type of settlement is called as a rural settlement. The next one is urban settlement. What is urban settlement? The people, those who live in cities and towns, are known as urban settlement. Now urban settlements have all the facilities. All the people, they engage in manufacturing, they engage in trade and commerce. They enjoy the life more over here. These are the two types of settlements. Now let's go to the patterns of settlements. Patterns are nothing but designs. Now there are three types of settlements are mentioned in your textbook, my dear friends. Nucleated settlement is also called as compact settlement, and the second one is dispersed settlement or scattered settlement, and the third one is linear settlement. Now let's understand about the nucleated settlement. What is nucleated settlement? Nucleated settlements have a number of houses built close to one another along the narrow streets. The size of the compact settlements depends upon the fertility of the soil. That means basically here the population, they live very closely, they live very compact. That's why this nucleated settlement is also known as compact settlement. Near to the junction points, near to any transportation like railway lines, near to the roads, and near to the sometimes near to the banks or to the commercial buildings, mostly you will find these compact settlements. And the next one, the dwellings are arranged in compact groups, irregular in older towns and regular. Geometrical pattern in new, these settlements are found close to the source of water in the areas of fertile soil at a confluence of river industries site. They are known as modern or medal settlements. Please remember this point, my dear friends. And the next one is dispersed settlement. What do you mean of dispersed settlement? Dispersed settlement is also known as scattered settlement. In comparison with the nucleated settlement, a dispersed settlements pattern is characterized by scattered, isolated dwellings. They are found in sparsely populated areas. That means here people are lived far apart, right? Here the houses are not close to each other. They live far apart. Highlands, poor soils, lack of water supply, and adverse climatic conditions help to create dispersed settlement. Due to these reasons, people are scattered. To make the things more clear, let us observe the given part of the topo sheet. One can clearly see that Antroli has a nucleated settlement, whereas Ikapura has a scattered or dispersed settlement. You please follow the topographical sheet or topographical map which is given in the textbook and go through that one. It is given clearly what is the difference between nucleated and what is the difference between dispersed or scattered settlement. In extreme, not suitable for living, as well as in here where it is not suitable for living, mostly you find in Punjab, Haryana, some parts of Gujarat and Rajasthan. People live near the farms, they look after their farms and they live in scattered areas. The third one is linear or ribbon pattern. These patterns or these settlements developed along the roadsides, rivers, canals or railway line. Everybody wants to take advantage of frontage of the main road or canal. Please remember this. Who are these people? Linear or ribbon pattern people. The interior is therefore left undeveloped, causing wastage of valuable land. The growth of settlement also depends upon the availability of water for domestic, agriculture or industrial purpose. Such a pattern can be seen along the perennial source of water. Here, these locations are seen near the roads or near the rivers or near the lakes. Can you see the difference over here? Antroli, Ikapura, Ikapura. Can you see the difference over here? Scattered and dispersed, a nucleated settlement and dispersed settlement. For example, the settlement pattern shown in the village Vajna is linear type of settlements built along the metal road. You all can see over here, which is built along the metal road. Let us all study once again whatever we have discussed. What is the topography? Topography is nothing but it is a study of forms and features, land forms and land features of land surfaces. What are topographical features, by the way? Topographical features include mountains, hills, valleys, lakes, oceans, rivers, cities, dams and roads. These are the topographical features. Now what is elevation? The elevation or height of mountains and other objects is recorded as part of topography. It is usually recorded in reference to sea level. Please remember, it is recorded above the sea level, the surface of the ocean where the water flows. The next one is counter lines. What is a counter line? A line on a map representing an imaginary line on the land surface. Can you see the line over here? So these lines are representing the land surfaces, my dear friends, all points of which are at the same elevation above the datum plane are also called as sea level. So whatever the lines that you are seeing, these are all measured and these are all showing the elevation above the sea level. Numbers on the lines give the height in feet. Now I hope you all can see the numbers over here. These numbers are giving the height which is measured in feet, and these heights are measured from zero level, sea level. Lines drawn close together indicate that the slope is steep. There are some rules which are to be followed while measuring the rule number 1. Every point on the counter line has the same elevation. Whatever the line that you are seeing, they have the same elevation, they have the same heights. There is no gap or there is no difference in the heights. Rule number 2, counter lines separate uphill from downhill. So uphill is measured different and downhill is measured different, my dear friends. Please remember this. Rule number 3, counter lines do not touch or cross each other except at a cliff. So these counter lines do not touch or do not cross at each other, only except on the cliff on top. It can be touched or it can be crossed. Rule number 4. Every fifth counter line is darker in color. So every fifth color, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth line is marked as dark color, dark brown color. Please remember this, my dear friends. So these are some of the rules and these are the definitions of counter lines. The next one is counter interval. What is a counter interval? The difference in elevation between two lines. Can you see the difference over here? It is a gentle slope, and this is how the gentle slopes are measured on the topo sheet or topographical map. Then a counter interval is the vertical distance or distance in elevation between counter lines. Index counters are bold or thicker lines that appear at every fifth counter line. So fifth counter line is known as index line. Please remember that. If the numbers associated with the specific counter lines are increasing, the elevation of the terrain is also increasing. The next one is mountain. What is a mountain? A mountain is an elevated portion of the earth's crust, generally with steep sided, that shows significant exposed bedrock. Bedrock is also known as substructure composed of hard rock. Okay, bedrock is also called as hard rock, where the mountain is standing. A mountain differs from a plateau in having a limited summit area and is larger than hill, typically rising about 300 meters above the surrounding land. The next one is plateau. What is a plateau? Tableland is known as plateau. A plateau is a flat elevated landform that rises sharply above the surrounding area on at least one side. One side it is raised, so the other side it is flat. Plateaus occurs on every continent and take up a third of the earth's land. They are one of the four major landforms along with the mountains. Mountains, plains, hills and plateau. These are some of the landforms of the representation of geographical features. The next one is col or pass. A col is a short, steep-sided depression on the ridge. A pass is a low land between two mountain peaks. Can you see the difference between this mountain and this mountain? It is a low land between two mountain peaks. Saddle. When the depression between the mountain peaks becomes broad and low, it is called as a saddle. When the depression between the two mountain peaks become broad and low down, it is known as saddle. Hope you all have understood.